Hi there, my name is Coach Steve, and today I'm actually going to be doing a quick overview of the book, The Three Laws of Performance, which is a fantastic book that was actually brought on by my coach David Gerber. Very appreciative of that. So many good nuggets and principles that I hope to be able to draw out from the book for you today. So I like to start with a quote is, everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. That's by Leo Tolstoy. If you think about that, as a lot of times we go into something, it could be anything, marriage, our work, a business, and we like to point fingers, but a lot of times we just have to redirect that finger back at ourselves. So this Three Laws of Performance really does a great job of, the authors do a phenomenal job of talking about why that is and how to go about creating a shift in your organization, just simply by looking at what you're doing or not doing yourself to make that come about. Because if you think about a leader, somebody that is willing to be authentic and transparent, they have to be able to address things that they are doing or not doing themselves. And so as we look at for today's, there's three objectives, which is the three laws of performance. The first one is how people perform correlates really to how the situations occur to them. So if you look at the first one, right? First one, you can kind of almost see perception. People's perception is everything. So do you know the perception of the people that you work with? People that you hire, people, maybe employees. That's the first law. The second law of performance is how a situation arises in language, right? So number two is the language. What are people speaking? What are really people thinking that you're not capturing, or maybe you are, but you're not able to really create the change that you want based off of not being able to know what to do with what you're hearing. The third law of performance is based on the future-based language transforms how situations occur to people. So if we look at the third law, future-based language, we're going to look at, are we going to be limited versus possibility thinking? We're going to get into that a little bit more. And so we're looking at basically how these areas interact with each other and what we can do about, what a leader can do to go about creating the change that they want to see. Because we're looking at really is, why do I care about this issue being resolved? How do I perform or transform an impossible situation? Right? Nothing's impossible. Where are the keys to performance? And how am I going to, what am I going to do about going on this path of mastery, as we'll get into. So if we look at the first law, that perception becomes everything. Well, we look at it and we say how people perform correlates directly to how situations occur to them. So it's like our belief system, right? We got limited versus possibility thinking. We have something called the reality illusion that the authors in the book allude to. It's seeing things at how they occur to us, not as they are. So it's our lens. It's the way we see it, right? I like one of the analogies I think is really cool is kind of the iceberg analogy, where you have, here's an iceberg that is, 90% is like below water, right? 90% below water. But yet, as a lot of times what most people see, a lot of times most leaders will see what's above the surface, right? And above the surface is not the heartbeat of your organization. So if you think about it this way, it's really, this is kind of what people think is really going on. In reality, what's underneath is going on. What are your people doing each day? What are they talking about? What's going on in the situation? What's the dedication of your employees? How hard are they working? Where is their habits as far as do they come to work on time? Are they disappointed with things at work? Do you have somebody that's sacrificing, going above and beyond? Is there people that are persisting through changes in the organization? And how's that look like? So if you got the iceberg, we're looking at down here. One interesting fact that as I was looking up a study for the Center for Management and Organizational Effectiveness, showed that training, when you bring training into an organization, like say if you were going to say, oh, I'm going to teach my staff and maybe they need to be trained, it only correlates with about a 23% retention, because a lot of it is above the surface. It's not getting down to what people are thinking, how the training is going to actually impact them directly in their lives. Whereas coaching, when they brought in training plus coaching, brought in an 88% retention. Why? Because the coaches were able to go in and see what the heck's actually going on in the organization, what is really going on, and the people be able to tell the coach that, right? So the coach will know which trainings are going to benefit them, but also the staff will feel heard, that their voice is heard, that they have, that somebody actually cares about what they think. So if we think about that, this is what people don't see down here that the coach can find out, but this is what people do see, what the leaders a lot of times see that don't jump in and get their people to see what's really going on. That's the first law. The second law is really how a situation arises in language. So what do people really think? A good illustration that I was thinking about that the authors brought is, you ever see the cartoons like Charlie Brown and stuff like that? And you'll see in there you got these characters that have that's a cloud, a thought, and then you got another person over here. That's a thought. Another person over here. That's a thought. So the question is how does a leader know what they're thinking, and they're thinking, right? Unless they get in there and they start to ask questions, unless they get in there and start to get to know their staff, right? Because if you think about it like this, is a lot of times language can be spoken, right? Language can be spoken, can be written communication, can be body language, facial expressions, how we see people react and how they respond every day, tone of voice, pictures, drawings, like this one, music, how people even dress coming to work and wherever they go kind of can even sometimes speak volumes, right? So it's the unsaid but communicated. So in here, we look at assumptions, expectations, disappointments, resentments, regrets, interpretations, significance, and issues that occur as dangerous. So in here, it looks at if nothing changes, then the future will resemble the past. It's similar to what they call linguistic clutter, which is nothing new can come in. It's like a closet that has piled with clothes and boxes that comes falling out as you open the door. Nothing new can come in until we know, as leaders, till we know exactly what they're thinking. Otherwise, we are lost, right? So the question mark comes on us. If we don't know what's going on with the language of our people, which is what they're really saying and feeling on the inside, then we cannot create the change that's necessarily going to bring our organization to where we want to go. Okay? So that's the second law. The third one looks at future-based language, transforms how situations occur to people. So we look at how can we create change? I talked about that term limitation versus possibility. Well, that's huge, right? That's a huge difference of whether there's hope and possibility, or where there's limitation and just settling for whatever because you don't believe that anything's going to change. This is getting to know your people well, right? So if we look at, I like to look at it two ways, right? So if we look at the déjà vu, so we look at déjà vu, which means what? The same thing. Same things happening, right? Or we can look at, and I made this up, this term, du vu déjà, which is a new experience. So if we look at, would be limitation, right? Are people thinking in limitation that nothing's ever going to change? It's always the same. They come to work. It's like Groundhog Day, the movie with Bill Murray. If you ever saw that, same day he wakes up to the same thing, right? Or are they looking at it as possibility? In possibility, you're thinking of, wow, this is going to be something I've never seen before. This is a new experience. I have not ever gotten to the point where I've been able to even imagine what this is going to be. But it's almost like you think about it like setting our sails, moving forward. You know, like a great explorer that's discovering new lands, new territory, new things that that you didn't know were possible. So you think about that, right? It's with this is the default future if nothing changes, right? If nothing changes, because this consists of our fears, our hopes, expectations, predictions, right? So in this case, a word that comes from this is this is using descriptive language. Descriptive language is this, oh, this is the way it's always been. Nothing's ever going to change. That would be here. Or our past tells us that this is going to happen. Or we're looking at basically just going off of past experiences, past results, past relationships. Whereas over here, it's bringing about what's called generative language. Okay. Generative language, which generative language brings up a new vision for possibility, eliminates the blinders off people, because it really starts to, with possibility thinking, it starts to look at why not, what if, what's possible. That's where dream building kind of comes in, setting a vision, creating our mission. And it really is about, if you think about the invention of America, right, with creating the 13 colonies. That was a form of generative language. Wasn't in play yet, but people had dreamed about it. They'd envisioned it, and then they took action to create that. Or Martin Luther King's speech, I have a dream, right? By creating a dream in others. He saw it fulfilled later, even though he already had a vision what was possible that was now carried out to others. Others were empowered to carry that dream forward. That would be generative language. So we're looking at, we need to bring a new experience to our people that they have not seen before, with our staff. Now, because we look at declarations grow from generative language, right? If we look at setting new possibilities, setting ourselves for new territory, then we're going to be looking at creating declarations. And declaration, if we think about declaration, it's really a statement that says, I am committed to doing this. It's not just a dream or a hope for a future. It's an actual, I am committed to be in this, right? So it means commitment. I'm committed to seeing something through, right? So think about like the Declaration of Independence was signed by 52 men, right, that created the Declaration of Independence. So what came in that? You have a commitment, committing yourself, so you're all in, basically burning the ship. There's no going back. There's putting yourself at risk, right? So we have faith in the unknown. Who knows? It hasn't been created yet. Rewriting the future. This is uncharted territory, right? No one's seen it. This is it's almost, some people think of it as dream building, but it's really creating a vision for what you want to see that's never been seen yet. And then, of course, there's invented new possibilities, allows for new outcomes, right? New results. And then after the war was won, we see the invented future shifted possibility to reality with the creation of the Constitution of the United States, right? So this commitment, you cannot create a reality without first committing yourself to something, right? That's that generative language where that comes into play. Because descriptive, declarations don't mean anything to descriptive language because you're not thinking in terms of possibility. It's all limitation. It's all looking at past results. So when we're rewriting our future, right? When we're rewriting our future, I look at it as similar to marriage vows. So we're taking with declarations, we're taking action, right? Like when we're married, we're taking action by going and committing ourselves to our future spouse, right? Future speaks to everyone in the process, so our spouse. So this is all the people, the family, the staff that you work with, right? And also, future exists in the moment of speaking. So in the moment of speaking, this is taking action now. So it's created now with people that are closest to you, whether it's your family, your loved ones, your colleagues, your staff. So you're looking at declarations as a way of being vibrant and compelling in the moment. So you're allowing people in your life to be stakeholders, that they have a reason to be in the game. Taking ownership, taking action is on you, and being able to empower others to take action as well based on their gifts, talents, and abilities. You see now, as in we're living right now, we're moment to moment in living a fulfilled life, right? And that's living right now. If we're focused on achievement, we're too focused on the future. So we want to bring that back to what we're doing today, right this moment. So we look at leadership corollary 1, and kind of going with the first law of performance, how people perform correlates directly with how situations occur to them. Then the leaders have a say and give others a say in how situations occur. So think about this, kind of like with declaration, is ask yourself, what is your mission? What is your vision for yourself and your organization? Do you know? Because if you do not know, that can be a huge gaping hole right there. So what is the mission? Right? What is it? Because that's the first part of building, growing forward into the next step, which is helping everyone be able to take authorship. Authorship is everyone has a piece in the game. Everyone has, they're a stakeholder, right? That you're dependent on everyone for the success of your organization. Kind of like an interdependence that Stephen Covey would talk about in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So we're looking at encouraging, so we have a mission. People know exactly what we're about, what we're doing. And you have people that come part of that mission as authors, creating the business, creating the invention of what you want to see down the road. They're co-authors to the new future. Stakeholders, they're owners, taking ownership. So in order to have a situation to where people go, why does this even matter to me? They need to be able to be a stakeholder in your company, your business, whatever venture that you're on, because without that, they don't have buy-in, and they're not going to care about anything else, right? They're not going to care about any other change that you're trying to make. So this is very important that people become stakeholders in your company. Then we look at leadership corollary 2 based off the second principle, which second principle is law of performance is what? Leaders master the conversational environment in this case. Because if we look at how a situation arises in language, like we talked about, then leaders must master the conversational environment. What's conversation? Conversation is simply communication, right? Nothing happens outside of a conversation. Because you cannot communicate without conversation. So how are we in our ability to convert? Do we listen to our people? Do we pay close attention to them? Do we take time to sit down with them, right? You look at integrity. When we communicate, integrity comes into that, because when we ask people for their feedback, we talked about co-authors, right? People taking authorship, and we want to really hear the voice of the people. Integrity is the biggest part, because it's being a person of our word, right? Are we a person that's a person of our words, or yeses and nos? Do they matter? Are we able to be a person of our word? Because if we can't, people will sniff that out, and they won't continue to follow us, right? Whether it's our colleagues, whether it's staff, whether it's potential business partners, they won't follow us. So where's our current level of integrity? This is a real gut check for leaders, right? And to master the environment of conversation is, what kind of things are you speaking out of your mouth, and can you back that up with your actions? That's to the commitment. Okay. Leadership corollary 3 has a lot to do. So if we look at the third law of performance, future-based language transforms how situations occur. So we look at how situations occur. Then the third corollary is leaders listen. This is what I was talking about listening just a few seconds ago. Leaders listen for the future of the organization, right? It's the emotional intelligence, EQ. Emotional intelligence. You can grow this, right? This can grow, right? IQ's not. IQ, they say, is once you have it, it's stuck, although they're starting to have more research coming out that proves that you can grow this. Well, for the time's sake, emotional intelligence is huge as a leader, right? This is where getting to be aware of yourself and your staff. Keys right here, right? Daniel Goleman wrote a good book on emotional intelligence. I highly recommend that. But you're diagnosing the health. What is the health of yourself? and your business, right? So you're cultivating through that you're cultivating really the ability to create a growth mindset. This is where you want to see, if you want to see growth, then you have to know what's going on. Emotional intelligence is the big piece in that. So an example, think about it like this. How well do you listen to the health of your organization? Doctors examine the heart, right? So think about the way that a physician searches, right, for a diagnosis. So we examine the heart, right? They examine blood work, x-rays, history of a present illness, right? And reviews all the information, including listening to the patient and listening for the diagnosis. Likewise, then leaders also must examine their situation from a number of different perspectives, such as with your finances, with your products, with your market position, competition, with your culture, and aspirations of your own employees. Leadership gets everyone talking, putting forth ideas, testing them, and making proposals and counter-proposals. So everyone needs to be involved, right? So for growth to happen, we must need everyone on board. Everyone's important in the growth of the company, but in order for that to happen, the leader must know the heartbeat. I want to say the heartbeat. The health is the heartbeat. What is really going on? We need to figure that out in order for us to continue to grow as a company and really to expand our ability to really go above and beyond. Okay, so some of the leadership traps, which is interesting, is if you're focused on good, which a lot of companies do, say, oh, we're doing okay, we're doing good, then the problem is you don't really leave any room for great. Right, so that's the first leadership trap, is you thinking, oh, you're already doing good enough, we're doing fine, so why should we? So that's a big trap, because then a lot of times when you're stuck where you're at, you're either going to slide backwards or you're growing forward. So that can be one trap. Also, lacking integrity leads to broken promises, like I just talked about. Then nobody starts to trust you. Nobody starts to believe in you because you haven't been a person of your word. So why should they put forth their vulnerabilities and their ideas, because they don't feel like they can trust you. The third one is really underutilization of the internal and external stakeholders. If you look about that, internal stakeholders are all your staff, the people you work with. External, like your clients, your patients, your customers, they're also stakeholders trying to tell you, give you feedback on how your service could be better as well, or product, right? Because when you don't use your internal and external stakeholders, you actually promote turnover and disengaged employees and dissatisfied patients by not listening. Focused, and the fourth one I'd say is focused on time and energy. You think it requires too much of your time. You think, oh, I'm too drained. I'm already pulling a full shift, or I'm working all day. I don't have time to work out the 3 laws of performance. Well, I would tell you, then you're going to continue to have the same results and expecting different things. That's the definition of insanity. So if you're happy with things are, okay, that's good. But if you're not, these tools that we're talking about, the 3 laws, are going to be critical and crucial for you to have in not just a good running organization, but a great organization, a great company, right? For yourself and your staff, really. Because if you think about energy, that last one, energy is created, it's not stored. So when you come to work excited, enthusiastic, when you're hopeful and you have full of possibility, people tend to feed off that. So it all starts with what you bring to the table. Like at the beginning quote, it starts with the inner change in you first. Then it gets spread to the people around you. So as a leader, the next step is the path to mastery. Mastery is huge, right? So we're looking at mastery as, spell that here. So we're looking at mastery, and we want to see, what are we doing every day? Does it count? Does it move us closer to what we're trying to do in life, right? It's kind of like if we think about, this is a crisis of authenticity. Is our way of being in the world. It's kind of like the story of the wolf, from the old Cherokee chief. He talks about this story of an old Cherokee chief is teaching his grandson about life. A fight is going on inside me, he said to the boy. It is a terrible fight, and it is between 2 wolves. One is evil, meaning he has anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, self-doubt, and ego. The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, patience, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. This same fight is going on inside of you and in every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute, then asked his grandfather, which wolf will win, the good or the evil? And the old chief simply replied, the one you feed. So isn't that interesting? The one you feed. So mastery. Mastering our thoughts, right? So our thoughts lead to what? Thinking. Lead to our choices. What choice we're going to make. Right? Let me get another pen as this one's worn down there. Which leads to our actions. And which leads to our results, right? So mastery is, that first one is our thoughts. You get what you focus on. What are we focused on? You get what you focus on. That's really what that story is talking about. If you want to, which wolf are you feeding, right? So mastery is beginning to feed the right wolf, beginning to feed the wolf that gets you where you want to go, okay? The second path of mastery is making the necessary investments in yourself. The greater, so if you think about it, the greater the work or the cause you're doing, the greater the reward also. So I love the quote, what I cannot create, I do not understand. So that means that you have to be in the process of ownership, of creating it, of innovating it. Otherwise, there's no buy-in. Whether it's you or your staff or the people that you work with, everyone has to take ownership in that because then they understand it. They understand it so much more. Okay, so the third part is talking in terms of projects, not problems. We want to see things as projects because obstacle becomes the way. So if you throw obstacles here, between our thoughts and our choices, and whichever direction that you want to, it's okay because we are focused, we have a vision that keeps us going, right? And we see problems. So if we have a thought thinking leads to choices and action. So if our choices are not leading what we want, right, we can see a project is the ability to see things in the light of a game. So you think about like a game, something that's fun, you're going to bring more excitement, enthusiasm. You're going to be thinking of what's possible with this. Versus a problem would be seeing it as, oh man, same thing's happening again, we're getting the same results, I don't think anything's going to change. So we want to create that mindset of looking at it through the lens of talking in terms of projects. So looking at projects as with enthusiasm, with the ability to create something, even if it seemed like it was a failure, there's always it's good feedback. It's always feedback, right, on that. So the question as you think about all this is, why not? Why even look at the 3 laws of performance? Well, as we covered, it kind of reminds me of the Chicago Cubs winning the World Series this year after 108 years of not winning it. It's amazing how, just looking at the span of time, how they were able to rewrite history, right, by creating a massive shift in their culture. And it started from the top down, from the owner to the think about the owner of the team, to the general manager, to the coach, to who they hire as their ball players, to the fans. Everyone involved in the organization is needed for them to create that shift of what's possible, right? Because 108 years, if you went off of descriptive language, you'd be like, oh, we're never going to win this thing. But generative, they went out and said, no, we will. We continue to pursue mastery. We continue to build. We continue to see things as a project, not a problem. And look what you saw, a World Series victory this year. So ask yourself, with the 3 laws of performance, how is it working out for me lately in my personal life and my professional life? Analyzing the real status of yourself, being transparent. Why do I care about these issues being resolved, like I talked about at the beginning? What will happen if nothing changes? Know your why. Need your default filter. What steps do you need to take right now in order to rewrite your future of your business, right? So being committed to the 3 laws of performance. Who are you willing to be in order to establish the 3 laws? So the path to mastery. Who are you willing to be? That's a big, right? That's also big. And then who coaches you? Who do you go to for coaching? Like you talked about at the beginning, 88% of changes last when there's coaching involved. So who keeps you accountable to have these breakthrough performances? Who are you celebrating the journey with for your personal and your professional career? That's huge. So I hope that these things made a difference for you today, and I continue to enjoy serving and hopefully bringing things that add value to your personal life, your relationships, and your professional life. Thank you, and have a fantastic holiday season. Bye.